Hello. Tension over English rights to territory in France and Edward III's claim to the French throne initiated the series of related wars involving allies on both sides, punctuated by truces that lasted 116 years, from 1337 to 1453, a period of armed conflict labelled the 100 Years' War by later historians. In order to transport troops and exert control in the Channel, Edward III built up his navy and supplemented the number of vessels in the royal fleet with hired merchant ships. In 1340, a fleet of 160 ships, led by the king in his flagship, the cog Thomas, assembled in the mouth of the River Orwell before setting sail for the Zwin estuary, now on the border between Belgium and the Netherlands, where a large French fleet was moored. Finding the enemy ships in a strong defensive formation outside the port of Sluis, Edward pretended to withdraw, luring the French into open water. With the wind in their favour, the English fleet then came about to engage and board the French ships. Jean Froissart's contemporary chronicle vividly depicts the close combat and hand-to-hand action. Some 180 French ships were captured. Around this time, the role of Keeper of the King's Ports and Galleys, created by King John, became the Clerk of the King's Ships. The first man to hold the post was William Cleaver. In 1346, King Edward crossed the Channel and landed in Normandy with a large army, capturing Caen and marching on to a famous victory over the French at Crécy, followed by a successful siege of Calais, a campaign in which naval resources and support were an important factor. Calais was strongly defended by two concentric walls with massive towers and a double moat. Rather than attack, Edward chose to starve Calais into submission, setting up a small siege town outside the walls. It took 11 months, but with Edward's ships keeping his forces equipped, ferrying in resources and reinforcements, while at the same time preventing Calais receiving supplies by sea, the town was taken, and an English garrison established at Calais, backed by strong naval support. After the destruction of their navy at Sluis, the French turned for support at sea to their Castilian allies, who sent a fleet of 47 ships into the Channel, where they began blockading English ports, interrupting trade and communication with English possessions in Gascony. King Edward himself took charge of a 50-strong fleet to deal with the situation. The resulting naval battle took place off Winchelsea in 1350. Known as the Battle of Winchelsea, or Les Espagnols sur mer, the Spaniards on the sea, the much smaller English ships outmanoeuvred the Castilian fleet, capturing or destroying up to half the Spanish ships for the loss of just 2 English vessels. The scale of the victory at Sluis and the defeat of France's Castilian allies ensured English command of the Channel for the immediate future and ended any threat of invasion. Forgive the pun, it wasn't all plain sailing. As the 100 Years' War progressed, English fortunes fluctuated. In 1372, a fleet commanded by John Hastings, Earl of Pembroke, carrying supplies and reinforcements for the English garrison at La Rochelle, which was under siege from the French, ran into the Castilian navy. Outnumbered by the larger Castilian ships, who used their height advantage to fire crossbow bolts and blazing arrows into the English vessels, the entire fleet was either captured or sunk, and John Hastings taken prisoner. He was held for 3 years before a ransom was agreed. The defeat, coupled with declining fortunes in France, added to growing opposition to the practice of the Crown commandeering merchant ships in time of war. The problem was that the King's own ships were seen as his personal property. When the King died, they were usually sold off in order to clear outstanding debts. When Edward III died in 1377, there were only 6 King's ships and all were sold. In 1380, A Castilian fleet attacked the Isle of Wight and key Channel ports before sailing into the Thames estuary, where they pillaged and set fire to Gravesend. A full-scale French invasion became a real danger. The response was to continue commandeering merchant ships, but to increase the compensation paid to their owners. Crews had always been paid directly by the Exchequer. Many merchants remained reluctant. When Henry V came to the throne in 1413, he set about adding to the 6 ships he managed to inherit from his father. I shall take a closer look at the results next time. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the like and subscribe buttons and click on the notification bell to be informed when the next video is available, or you can subscribe by clicking on the rose window over my shoulder.